Hello and welcome to my channel. My name's Michael Bullock, and today we're going to start a new painting and go through it step by step. This video was originally filmed in April of 2021 for my World of Watercolor class at San Juan College, located in Farmington, New Mexico. It was shot at my studio at Artifacts Gallery via Zoom. This was because at the time we were required to teach virtual classes due to the pandemic. At the time, I didn't have the best microphone, so I had to re-record some of the dialogue. So you'll notice when that happens. There are some spots where I might sound a little bit different, and that's because of the quality of my microphone now. Um, Also, bear in mind this is a an open studio, so there'll be some background noises here and there. So, this is the first half of a two-part video series, and I'll be releasing the second half for my next video. I'm still kind of playing around with my release dates, so right now I've been releasing on Monday or Tuesday of the week, but I'm thinking of doing like a Saturday morning release instead. So if you want to, if you want to weigh in on that, leave a comment below and let me know what you prefer. I got to thinking that maybe if you're a hobbyist or whatever and you're working, Saturdays might be a better day for you to try painting. So, or over the weekend or something like that. So just let me know what you think. If you're new to the channel, which I'm kind of assuming most people are because I'm sort of new to the whole YouTube thing, I've actually been using and I've had videos on YouTube for I don't know, since the early days of YouTube, but I haven't really taken it seriously. And so I just created this I recently created this particular channel, but please take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It'll really help me out, and I want to keep bringing you watercolor lessons. So if you enjoy the video, consider sharing it with anyone you think might, anyone else you think might enjoy it. I'd love to, you know, bring people into the world of watercolor, if you will. I'm going to take this little moment to do a little plug for Utrecht Art Supplies. I have an affiliate link in the description, and if you click on it, it'll take you to my curated supply list. So be sure and check that out. Some of the items, like paint colors, are doubled up. You might see two different brands with the same color. I just did that because I like both those brands. Don't feel like you need to order everything on the list. Just take a look and pick and choose things you think you might like. I've ordered some of the brushes for my list, and I'm going to be doing a review in the future, so keep an eye out for that. I did pay full price for them, so I'll be giving you my honest thoughts. I'm going to constantly add to that curated list on Utrecht Art Supplies, so check out the link below. I also have a discount code for Meaden Art. That discount code is MBW70. And with that, you can get 12% off your purchase. The link for that is also below. Meaden is a great site for budget conscious artists, especially those wanting to try watercolor for the first time. They have some great deals on their brand of watercolor paints and brushes, and they feature some amazing studio furniture. So be sure to check them out as well. And like I said, with MBW70, you can get 12% off your purchase. So now that's out of the way, let's get started with part one of how to paint a blue door. These are pretty prevalent in New Mexico, especially in areas like Taos and Santa Fe. And this door is located in Taos, New Mexico, and I absolutely love to paint it. I've painted this particular door a few times. You can see the finished painting right behind me. uh, and I'm kind of known for painting blue doors, the blue doors of New Mexico, Santa Fe, Taos, that area, and I just absolutely love painting blue doors. If you would like to paint along with me, there is a link also in the show notes below to the sketch that I created of this painting and the source photo that I use. So you can take a look at that. So with no further ado, let's get started and have some fun painting.
Okay, so there's my sketch. Why don't I do this? That way you can kind of see the sketch that I did and then the source that I was kind of using. I didn't sketch in any of this cool stuff, but it is kind of fun to try and do a little bit, like at least a hint of some of that texture of that hand carving. I know I'll show you guys how to do that, but you don't necessarily need to draw it in right away. Don't worry about that little detail. And you can see that I've simplified quite a bit. I liked all this little stuff, and it was kind of interesting. I don't know. I just wanted to kind of simplify, like around the window, and I simplified the door. You know, I turned it into a doorknob instead of this kind of fancy latch, just because it's easier. And I'm not sure, like if I were really zooming in on that and took a picture of that door latch and really wanted to paint that, then I would probably spend more time with that than what I did over here. But this one, you know, I made my door quite a bit shorter than planned, and I kind of roughly sketched in this little porch light, and I'm not sure how I feel about this pot right here yet. You can't see I have this really light line right here, kind of coming down and then across here and then down over here on this side. That's where that porch comes in. Right about here, there's a little deal that comes down, and it's a covered patio, so that casts that shadow. I'm going to clean off my palette just a little bit. And I kind of want this to be somewhat cleaner in this area here. So I'm going to start this with the kind of this wall back here. And, I guess you can kind of see that. I forgot I angled the camera so you could see my... I'm going to start with this kind of wall back here, and then probably actually this foreground as well, even though they're going to be a little bit different later. I think I'll do this whole wash here, and then this foreground. And I'm going to start with a little permanent yellow deep, mainly because even though it's a little hard to tell from the photo, but that was kind of later in the afternoon when you get that kind of lower sun that turns everything orange. A couple of these oranges, and then we'll move on from there. But so I'm going to start off, I think, with a little bit of this permanent yellow deep. If you don't have something like that, like a cadmium yellow deep or cadmium orange light, one of those kind of things, or Indian yellow. I have some Indian yellow here, and you can see it's so it's kind of almost between those two. So that's what Indian yellow is right there. I also have some Azo yellow. That's this. So if you had something like that, it's just a little bit lighter, but still very similar. You can kind of see. So any of those would work pretty well. And I'm just going to start with a little of that and work my way down. This is that place where the multicolored wash shines. And I'm just going to kind of work my way around these objects that I have here, like the door frame and the lantern with this permanent yellow deep. But I am getting to the point where I'm going to need to switch colors in order to have that multicolored wash. And I'm thinking about switching to permanent yellow orange or cadmium. You could use cadmium orange. I'm putting this permanent yellow orange down where it's wet it's wet on dry, but I'm starting it where the paint is wet so that I can get the two colors to run together. I can even add a little more water to it here in a minute to get them to run together better. I'll use a little opera here too, just to get a little bit different kind of light in there. Just kind of bring that in. Let's switch back to this. Well, I might try this Azo yellow. That's kind of fun. It's kind of fun. It's a little bit lighter, just a touch lighter without being like lemon yellow. Let's see. So that's a whole lot of that permanent yellow deep, and then I think I was using some Azo yellow there. Let's go back to, I may actually have a little of this orange up in there. And then we'll come back over here with some of that. I have to move kind of quickly. That's a little too much. Because it's warm in here, so I've got like 3 fans going, or well, 2 fans going. I've got the ceiling fan going, and it's drying stuff out pretty quick. No, although I'm not, overly worried about getting blossoms, particularly when doing like a stucco or adobe wall, something like that. I don't really worry about that too much. Let's see. I'm going to try a little Scarlet Lake, I think. If you don't have Scarlet Lake, there's any number of reds that would work fine. Alizarin Crimson would be a good one. Even Permanent Red. And I'm just kind of painting around where these, I've got this plant drawn in. I'm not overly concerned about it. Let's see, I'm going to kind of keep that right on here. A little more of that up in there before that totally dries. So I'm just basically kind of going around this wall shape until I've got this kind of nice, kind of orange and pink and red wash down on there. Let's see. Let's come in with a little more of that opera. A few spots. Now, some of this over here is going to be covered up by that shadow, but that's all right. Now, let's see. Let's come back down in here with a little. So I have Scarlet Lake there. I'm going to now switch over to a little Alizarin Crimson, which looks very similar, but it's just a little bit different. Just kind of bring that down into there. And then I'm going to switch back to like Permanent Yellow Deep or Azo Yellow or Indian Yellow, whichever one of those you want to use. And even though this is going to touch, and I'm okay with that, I'm just going to kind of bring that in there like so. Maybe switch over to that Permanent Yellow Orange. And let's get a little opera in there too. That. Move around with a little water. So right there, I put down a little of that opera, and then I cleaned my brush out. Well, really, I just stuck it in the water. So most of the paint came out, and there was just mostly water. And then I started moving that around on the page. That looks pretty good. That's that. Maybe just a touch more of that yellow. So it's right now it looks fairly flat because because it's almost all the same
value as everything. The whole section is the same value.
Use a little more of this Scarlet Lake down in here. I didn't think I had quite enough on there. I could have even used a little green in there or something. In fact, I may grab just a wee bit of this Permanent Green #1. Maybe Put that in a couple of spots right in here to kind of show that it's kind of moist or what's the word I'm looking for? Maybe even a little peacock blue, just to kind of give that a little variety. You know, kind of how you have those either concrete or stone paths, and they kind of feel a little damp compared to like other, or they appear that way. Flagstone, yeah, you'll it'll kind of have that kind of damp uh, look, and so that that could be kind of what this. There's a bit of moss or something growing in the cracks or something. So that's where this color is coming from. Let's go back to. So that was a little hooker's green that I dropped in there, and then this is a little peacock blue. That'll just kind of move this stuff around. Pick some of that excess water up down here with a thirsty brush. And you'll remember I'm just wiping the brush off, getting, squeezing out most of the moisture so it's damp but not wet. And that allows me to pick up some of this excess moisture along there. I kind of like how that looks. That's still damp enough. I think I might bring in just a bit of that green, maybe up in here, just to see what I think. And again, that just kind of gives it that earthy, and you're thinking, well, there's no green or orange or whatever, it's all earth tones, and that's true. But this is a more interesting looking adobe. And just that hint of a contrasting color kind of makes it a little more vibrant. So just that little hint of green, I think helped out, kind of made that a little more interesting, and made this kind of pathway a little more interesting. The, with the peacock blue and the so I'm going to dry this really quick, I think. And then we can kind of start on the door. I kind of want to make this. I made this window a little small, and these lines are a little dark. I'm just going to roll my kneaded eraser over those, but then I'm going to make that window just a wee bit bigger. Yeah. That works. I just felt like that window is just a little bit too small. So really, the only two things I kind of need to worry about are this doorknob and the window. So I'm just going to paint around those. We kind of want this turquoise door, but a lot of it's not going to be turquoise or cerulean blue or peacock blue or whatever blue that I'm gonna use a variety of blues and stuff in this, but I'm gonna actually start this with a little quinacridone gold. And if you don't have quinacridone gold, that's where raw sienna works really well. It's very similar. I just, like I think I've said this a few times. I switched to quinacridone gold just because I like it a little bit better than raw sienna. But there's nothing really wrong with raw sienna. It's actually a nice color. I just like quinacridone gold a little bit better. So you can see it's kind of this earthy gold color, kind of earthy brownish gold. And so I'm going to start with a little of that, and I'm not going to really work my way from the top to the bottom. I'm just going to kind of start somewhere in the middle and go from there. So I'm just going to put some quinacridone gold down in some spots, and then I'm going to come back in and like right now I'm going to use some Andrews turquoise. If you don't have Andrews turquoise, cerulean blue is really nice. I'll be using some of that later on this same thing. So just a little of that. Maybe some more over here. Let's see. Use a little opera in here. Right now that looks really strong, but I'm going to soften that back down with a lot of water. Oops. And it's okay that I got a little bit of water paint on my doorknob. I'm not too worried about that. I'm going to switch back over to some alizarin crimson. And in here, and then maybe down in there. And let's try a little cerulean blue now. That's kind of a chalkier looking color. A little bluer than the turquoise, the Andrews turquoise that I was using. Which I think I want a little more of right over in here. Let's see. I think I'm even going to grab a little bit of this permanent, permanent yellow orange and throw in a little of that in a few spots just so it looks, it's got a little bit brighter orange kind of wood coming through. Maybe a little peacock blue. Let's bring some of that peacock blue in. Whoa, that's a lot. There we go. That's a little better. We'll pick some of that up and pull it down in here. And then, now I always forget about this step. This step is wood, but unpainted wood, and I was actually going to do it as part of this, but I forgot about it. That's all right. Here's a little more peacock blue over here. Let's see. Add a little more water in some of these spots. Put a little more of that orange right in there. Really, actually, let's put some of that back over here. Let's go back to the Andrews turquoise. Kind of finish out over here with that. Maybe bring some more of it up in here. Let's go back to the cerulean blue, maybe. Let it kind of, I'm going to pick up this side and let it kind of run that way for a minute here. Pull that in. I think I'm going to grab a little permanent magenta as well. Drop that in a couple of spots. Maybe right in here where I want that to be just a bit darker. Let's see, what was I doing up here? Let's go back to some of that quinacridone gold. And then maybe back into some of that cerulean blue. And right now, this is probably looking like a big mess, but that is okay. This door won't really come into shape. Right now, it's just going to look like this weird blue blob. It's not really going to come into shape until the very end when we go in and paint some details. We start painting in details to this door. Until then, it's just going to look like this kind of turquoisey, pink, whatever blob of blue. Grab a little more of that turquoise and drop that in. Let's drop in a little
Quinacridone gold. In fact, I think I said alizarin crimson before, and I meant quinacridone gold.
And it's okay, I've got this kind of running over my doorknob and even over my stoop here or step, whatever. That is okay. Oh, boy, I really don't have you. There we go. Sorry, I had this mostly angled at my palette. So just yeah, I mean it's kind of a messy blob of color right now, but that's okay. Once we once we start adding details in, it'll be fine. I'm gonna add a little more opera in a few spots. Here it's going to look a little more pure, and that's kind of cool. And then down here it'll mix a little bit more. Over here it's on top of some other blues and stuff, so that's all right. Maybe just a bit more of it. Well, actually, I want to come in with the permanent yellow deep instead of the permanent yellow orange in a few spots, kind of. And let's see, I've got a fair excess water. I can just kind of come in and pick some of that back up. Even if color runs down into it, that's okay. I'm going to hit it with a dryer for a minute and see how much I get dry, and then if I can get some of that to blossom, because that starts to look like peeling paint and stuff when we get that to happen. So let me just hit this just for a second.
Now I'm just going to drop in a little bit of water here, see if I can't get this to blossom.
Put a little more turquoise down here in this corner. I just dropped some cerulean blue in there. The thing I like about the cerulean blue for this particular, type of thing is that it's got that kind of chalky, you'd see almost granulated look, and that when it dries gives you a really kind of cool texture for something like this. That's kind of interesting. It's not exactly how I wanted it to turn out, but it's still fairly interesting. I kind of like it. What I may do is, now that that's kind of dry, I may come in with just a bit of this peacock blue right here over the Andrews turquoise, just to brighten up a little bit of this bottom part of the door. And yes, I know that that's going to look weird, but once I add a little water and kind of allow this to kind of run down into some of that area, just felt like it needed just a bit of a brightening. That peacock blue can do that. It just adds a little bit more.
Then I'm going to place a little opera right in here. That'll help it pop just a little bit more and brighten it up.
Yeah, so I think that's pretty good. Obviously this looks like a, kind of a blue mess right now, but later, once we add some detail to that, I think it's going to look really good. Since this is dry out here, I'm going to kind of do the shadow across here. I'm not going to do the shadow on the door yet. I'm just going to worry about the shadow on the wall, because this shadow is going to be slightly different than this shadow. And for this, I'm going to start with a little permanent magenta. You can see this right here. And then I'll kind of move through some of these purples and blues and whatnot. And I can see that I've got this line kind of coming along here. So I'm just going to kind of bring that in. It doesn't have to be super dark to be a nice deep shadow. Let's see, I'm going to move on to a little
Peacock blue just to kind of change up a bit.
just throw in a little of that, which should have kind of a green tint to it. Up here, let's see. I don't want to get too close to that door with that, so I'm going to switch. I probably shouldn't have used that quite yet, but that's all right. I'm going to switch to some quinacridone violet, which is that slightly darker violet. Kind of bring that down in here. And then I'm just going to kind of paint around this door in the kind of beam.
I've got a bit of a curve right here I want to take into account.
And if you need to, when you get into a spot like this, you can always switch to a. Let's see, I'm going to switch back to that permanent magenta. You can always switch to a smaller brush if you need to get into some of these tight spaces, which is here. And add a little more of that up into there so it's not quite as dry. I'm going to use a little royal blue because it's a little darker in this corner, but I still want, you can see it's fairly fairly thin because I want a lot of that undercoat, that yellow that's underneath it to show through. Let's go back to this quinacridone violet here. Just kind of bring that in like so. Let those two kind of bleed together. Let's see. I'm going to mix a little quinacridone violet and royal blue together to get kind of deeper violet, which I kind of have already there a little bit, but I'm even going to, I think because there'd be just a wee bit of reflected light, I'm going to grab a little opera, drop in a few spots just for giggles. Some more water in here.
Then I'm just going to take a thirsty brush and kind of pick up some of this excess water, just kind of lift it out a little bit, just to lighten this ever so slightly. Now I'm just going to kind of clean up this edge just a little bit to make it a little, smooth it out just a little bit. I didn't really like that little tick mark that I had in there. So I'm just kind of cleaning this up just a bit. Might need a little more water in my brush.
Go back to this. Actually, I'm gonna mix a little Hooker's green with royal blue and get a nice little kind of green blue. And then what I'm going to do later is actually lift a little bit of this shadow back out where this curved wall is. Put that down in there. Add some water. Let's go back to this violet blue mix. Down into here. Finish that out. So let me add a little more of that violet blue. And bring a little of that blue green over here. Just to help balance that out. Once it dry, it looks a little dark and kind of, some of these spots look kind of brown on camera. But once it dries, I think it'll look a little less so. So we have that first bit of shadow. And again, it looks weird because the shadow's not on the door. Kind of thinking that this shadow should be a little lower down here. But I could be wrong. So I just came in with some of that purple. I don't know why I used purple instead of that green, but I'm going to come in with a little green right here. And just bring that, just felt like it needed to be just a bit lower than where I had it drawn. And having that extra little bit, of texture there just by kind of not, kind of haphazardly painting that with the side of my brush, I think kind of lends it a little extra texture. On camera, this stuff looks a lot dark, like earthier and muddier. I mean, it is a little bit muddy, but it looks a lot more than what it is in real life. So I'm going to do a little work in these kind of pots. And I'm going to start with just the plant material and then work my way. And what I'm going to do, just so I have something to kind of keep my eye on, I'm going to just kind of draw some areas where I think maybe some flowers would be. So I'm just going to kind of know, okay, and I'm just kind of randomly picking these kind of groups of flowers, and I'm gonna make sure that I paint around those.
Actually, if I was smart, I'd probably be using masking fluid to make it easier on yourself. That's what I'd do.
And you can see I'm not really worried about making these look. I mean, hopefully you can kind of see those shapes. They're not really shaped like flowers. They're just going to be color shapes, but they'll read like, somebody will think, oh, that looks like a flower.
Obviously, the light source is coming somewhere from the left-hand side of the page.
I'm going to start with a little lemon yellow in a few spots. Not too terribly worried about it being particularly. This is just some spots where I think maybe light will hit this plant. That's all I'm making it up. I'm not really too worried about it being perfectly correct. We'll use a little permanent green number 1 now. I'm just going to let this kind of hit where that yellow is.
That way they kind of bleed into each other and run together and mix on the page.
And this is just like my initial kind of pass. So I'll probably end up adding darker greens and stuff to this in spots. But right now, that's all this is, kind of the initial pass of color. Getting this down in here. And I'm just using my number 6 brush because it's fairly small and I can get into some tight spots.
And again, if I had been smart, I would have used masking fluid for this, but I did not.
Maybe I'll mix a little permanent or the lemon yellow with the green, number 1. That gives me kind of this slightly pea soup looking color, which is fine. Let's go into a little permanent green number 2 now. Just slightly darker, not a lot darker, but a little bit. Add a little more of that pea soup color that I mixed. I should have been over here, but that's okay. And again, this is just that kind of initial color. Back to that permanent green number 2. Maybe even a little hooker's green in a few spots. I'm going to come back later after this is dried and add a little bit more, but I want to add just a touch of hooker's green in a few spots. And I mean, you can see that, this is just kind of that impression of a potted flowering plant. And let's do the same over here. Come in with a little lemon yellow, some spots, highlight in there in a few areas. Some of this may go away, but for now, that's where it's at. Little permanent green number 1 in a couple of spots. And so I'm just kind of switching off between that lemon yellow and the permanent green number 1. And then some of that little bit of mix of the 2. Cool thing is, this doesn't really need, all this has to do is give the impression of a potted plant. It doesn't have to look like any particular potted plant specifically. If I was painting a portrait of just that, one of these flowers or something, then by all means, I would go in a little more carefully and think about petal shape and all that. Let's switch over to a little permanent green number 2. some of these spots. But for this, we're just giving the impression that it's a potted plant. You know, care that it's a specific kind. I mean, we'll think of it like that, but eventually. But right now, we're just kind of go back to that permanent green #1 yellow mix that I have going on here. Which now is a bit more permanent green than yellow, but that's okay. And again, until we add the color for the flowers, this is going to just look like some little weird blobs of green. Down in there, a little color, maybe a little hooker's green now, just in a couple of spots. So let's do a couple of these. Let's do these pots too. I think I'm going to go in with a little of that azo yellow, just because it's a little lighter than the permanent yellow deep, but a little darker than lemon yellow. And I'm just gonna. This is gonna be a straightforward kind of gradient for right now. I'm just gonna kind of do this one and then I'll do that one. But it's gonna kind of be fairly straightforward. So I have this kind of light yellow kind of wash, and then I'm going to come in with let's see, the permanent yellow deep maybe, which is just slightly darker. Do a bit of that. Add a little water right here where it's kind of dried out a bit. And then move into this, more orange. And I want to do this all while it's still fairly wet because I want these layers of color to blend in, and run together, so I get a nice smooth kind of gradient. Let's go back for some more of that orange. And then maybe what I'm going to use, I think, is a little permanent red. I could use Scarlet Lake or something like that, but I think I kind of want to just come in with some of this permanent red, kind of clean this edge up. And this particular permanent red actually has a wee bit of kind of a pink tint to it when it gets thinned down. So that's kind of interesting. That little flourishy thing that happened there by accident is kind of interesting. So not a real hard thing. Let me do this other side over here while that's drying, and then I can do the lip. They're all very similar, or this will be just about identical to that. So a little azo lemon or azo yellow, I think, in here. And then a little permanent yellow deep. And a little permanent yellow orange. Where that comes in, let's go back to this permanent red. Back here in the corner. Yeah. I just like these bright pots. I don't know why. I like the pots to be super bright. Well, you guys know that I just like really bright colors. Grab some of that. All right. Then I'll just do this lip real quick over here. And I'm just going to start with a little of the permanent yellow deep instead of that lighter azo yellow. Move into the orange. Just a hint of this red. Back over here. And maybe even, like I'm kind of feeling like maybe this needs just a hint of violet down in here. So I'm going to use this permanent magenta in here and then kind of smooth that out over, at least in this spot, uh, just to give it a bit more value change. Do the same right here. And I'll eventually put in a little bit of a shadow here from the curve of the pot. I just haven't, this is kind of that, but not totally. So we'll get to that here in a little bit as well. And let's do a little bit of that over here on this one too. There's a little permanent yellow deep, a little permanent orange, or permanent yellow orange, I mean. And that may be all there's, maybe just a bit of that red. Doesn't need a lot. It's kind of a hint of it there. And we'll end up with a with a shadow coming off of this stuff too to help flatten this plane out, because right now it just looks. I mean, it's starting to flatten out a little bit with this pot sitting on it and everything, but it's still going to be looking a little flat. It's not going to be. It's not going to look like it has any depth yet. I think now I'm going to work on this little porch light. That's actually just kind of. It's pretty easy. What I'm going to do is actually just use a little peacock blue for the glass, and I'm not going to really go into a lot of detail on this. I'm just going to put a little wash of this peacock blue in there right here for this bit. Maybe just a touch more over here. They drew this on here crooked, but that's all right. And then a little over here, but then I'm going to add in a little bit of a darker cast to it. Just so it's just slightly darker because it's on that side. Now, granted, light's going to be shining through it, so it's not really going to be that much darker. And then, how do I want to do this? I think I'm going to make this kind of rusty looking. So I think I'm going to start up here, and I'm going to start with some quinacridone gold. I think just up in this area. And again, this is going to, and maybe a little opera. This is going to look a little sloppy at first, but once we go in and start adding details, it'll start coming together. So don't panic if yours looks a little weird. Let's see. I'm going to come in with a little. I'm going to use brown madder, but you could use burnt sienna. That would work great for this. Pull a little of that over in there. And maybe a little of this violet that I mixed up too, that kind of dark violet. Just put a little of it over here. I think I'm going to put a little peacock blue in that too, just so it has a little hint of maybe metal. And then, in fact, that's what I'm going to start with here as well. I'm going to start with a little peacock blue. And then come in with a little of that brown madder. Let's mix a little. I'm going to mix a little of that with some indigo, just to get a little darker kind of bit over here on this side. So I just kind of made, really what that looks like is burnt umber. I took a little, in my case, brown madder, but if you don't have brown madder, burnt sienna works just as well. And I mixed it in with a little indigo, but you don't necessarily have to use indigo. You could use royal blue or any of those and kind of look the same. And then I'm just going to put, kind of some hints of that around the edge. Here, maybe we'll come down here with that. little less. So I'm going to add a little bit more of the brown matter or burnt sienna, whatever, and have so it's a little lighter shade over here. Let's pull in a little more indigo on this one, on this side, and then a little more indigo right there. Maybe this whole side ends up being, well, it's going to be, kind of the shadow side. So, but the cool thing is, I mean, this doesn't have to be perfect. Let's see, I've got this little, I'm going to make this just kind of a dark hoop, where this hoop kind of comes up with a bit of a shadow on this side. So I'll just go ahead and paint that in to give that a little bit of dimension. And then I've got this kind of thing that comes off. I don't, it's not necessarily anything in particular. It's just kind of a little scribbly squiggle kind of thing that kind of looks like maybe it holds that lamp. Let's see. Let's come back in with a little of this kind of earthy color. Which is, that's mostly burnt sienna that I used right there. Let's go back to that indigo violet burnt sienna mix. I had a little bit of violet in there too, but it's close enough. Just add a little bit of a shadowy thing down there. Yeah. Maybe just a bit of a hint of something there. But again, I mean, I don't care if this looks, to me, it doesn't need to look perfectly real. I'm just kind of hinting at some sort of light fixture here that there's not a lot of detail. It's just kind of a little scribbly thing. And that's all it really is. It doesn't have to be perfect. Not sure why that has a little white spot, but I'm going to put a little orange right in there. I don't mind it being a little lighter right there. Maybe it's caught a reflection or something. But I didn't really want it white. So yeah, I mean, that's really all that is. It's just like a 2-minute thing just to paint that lantern. And I've got a little shadow drawn there. I could do that real quick. And all that's going to be is just kind of this violet, probably this kind of violet-y color up in here that I've got, which was quinacridone violet. Well, I was using permanent magenta, but I'm going to use quinacridone violet and a little bit of peacock blue mixed in. I'll show you what I'm doing here. So I've got quinacridone violet right there. And then I just went over and grabbed a little of this peacock blue that's on my palette. And so I've got a couple of different violets there, maybe even almost 3. And I'm going to start with the lightest, that just pure quinacridone violet. And kind of come in with this shadow. And I want to leave some spots for the light kind of coming through. But what I'm going to do is actually lift that back out. So here's that. I'm going to go back into some of that kind of middle quinacridone violet, peacock blue, and then down here, we're going to go into a little darker stuff. So, again, I'm not super concerned with how accurately this shows. This, looks as far as being, this shape here. But as long as it kind of reads like that, I'm good. Clean that up just a bit. That, and that was just, I put just a hint of pure peacock blue right down there in the corner just for fun. And what I'm going to do is completely clean my brush out now and come back in and kind of where I left that little bit of light showing through. I'm going to come back in and pick that up really quickly. So it looks like light coming through. Now, I don't want it to look rounded like that, so I'm going to come back in like there, kind of do that. And maybe there's a little bit here, but it kind of just, it starts to read like, light coming through that glass just by picking that up a little bit. Still has a shadow. It still shows that there's light bouncing off of that, but it's also allowing some to pass through. So it just kind of reads. I think that's a little too thin, though. So let me bring a little of this over here. Oh. Maybe a little of that peacock blue again. Yeah, like so. So it kind of has that feel of, let me flatten this end over here too. It has that feel of light coming through, but also some of the light not making it through. So it's a little dimmer than, what's there. And again, it's just a suggestion of a shadow. It may be a little too dark. What I may want to do is lighten it just a bit more. Just by, I've got this paper towel that's kind of wonky, but, well, it's because I use it to clean my palette. Let's see if I lighten that. It didn't really lighten it that much. Just a bit more water right there. Yeah. It doesn't look that much different on camera when I turn around and look at my monitor, but in person it looks a little bit lighter. So, yeah, just kind of fun. Technically there would be some sort of, would be like this kind of hoop kind of shaped thing going on. And some sort of little shadow coming off over here. Well, this will make that look a little more like it's based on reality. Where that little doodaddy shape is. There we go. All right, so this is definitely dry now. So let's do this cast shadow, and I'm gonna use a round brush just because there's some tight spots. But I'm gonna move up to this number 10, and I'm gonna start with some royal blue. I want this kind of watered down though. And I picked up a little green in there as well. So it's going to look like I'm putting on a lot, but I'm going to add some water here. I'm going to clean my brush out and add water. So I have this kind of royal blue, and I'm just going to put that down. And then I'm going to move into a little violet. So I'm going to grab a little quinacridone violet and a little royal blue and kind of pull them down. And then this shadow is going to drop down just a little bit lower than where that was. And pull it across kind of like that. So there's a little of that. And again, it looks like I'm adding a lot, but I want this really wet, so I put some down and then I grab a lot of water. You know, I kind of clean my brush out and grab some water. I'm going to switch it up to kind of this lighter permanent magenta, kind of more pink. Go back to this royal blue that I've got up here. And again, I want to be able to see a lot of that color showing through. So I don't like where that's ending up, so let's just pull in just a bit more. I'm just going to make sure that that whole window's in there. I didn't want it right at the corner. That was a little weird, wonky. So let's move into some of that violet again. And maybe what I'll do is grab a little Hooker's green and really use some green and some royal blue. I don't know if you can see that. It doesn't look a whole lot different. But this is Hooker's green and royal blue right there. And I'm going to bring a little of that. Yeah, see, that's got that kind of nice aqua, dark turquoise kind of look. And I realized what I've just wasn't paying attention to what was going on over here. Maybe the roof does this other little wonky thing. I'm going to make it work. Wasn't paying attention. I'm going to make it work, though. And I think that this actually will come in a little lower because it's back behind. And that'll work all right. The great thing about shadows is they don't have to be perfect. I'm going to move over into a little of this violet. So I know this still looks like kind of a weird mess, but bear with me. Grab a little more of that dark, this royal blue violet.
Kind of down in this area here. Just want to add that violet, a little more violet down here.
See if I can't get any blossoms over here. A couple of spots. Just to give me some cool texture. I'm going to use a little opera, I think. Just to displace some of this color and get more water. Let's see. Just didn't have enough water in my brush. So I know that looks a little weird right now. Add some more water. Get that to run and do its thing. You can still see, you know, in this spot, you can still see some of that color showing through in a lot of this area, actually. You can see some of that quinacridone gold. I'm going to add a little more water. Just to kind of lighten a few areas and then just kind of lift some of that back up. All I'm doing is taking a clean, damp brush, kind of rolling it, picking some of that back up, some of that excess water. I'm not pressing really hard on the paper or anything. If I was, more paint would come up, kind of like what I did over here.
We'll just hit this with a hairdryer real quick and get that all dry.
we're going to stop here for this video. I hope you enjoy watching it as much as I enjoyed making it. And if you made it this far and really do like it, please consider subscribing to my channel and clicking that little bell to get notified of my next videos or upcoming videos. It's completely free and it really helps me out. I want to keep doing this. I want to keep bringing you painting content like this. And while you're at it, also consider clicking that like button and then share the video with anyone you think who might enjoy it as well. Let me know if you prefer a Saturday release in the comments below. And as always, if you have a question or comment, leave that below as well. I'd love to hear from you. So with that, I'm going to say goodbye. I'll see you in the next video. And remember, life's too short to paint on cheap paper.